this legislation privatize the department, and do you have private funders lined up?
Yeah, will it privatize it? Look, the first thing, the answer to that, Joe, is yes, we're going to go to the private sector, and we are going to ask them to help fund this program. In the meantime, Mark will spend time figuring out which of these programs that we currently have by statute that have appropriations would be moved into JobsOhio. Those appropriations will remain. That's why the legislature will have, oversight over this. They'll know what the heck is going on, and I'll talk about that in a second. But ultimately, it would be great if we could create a not-for-profit system there that is self-funding. And we think about that. I don't want to get into the details because I'll be getting ahead of myself, but there will be, Joe, I'm going to have to go out and raise money. The utility companies historically have been able to support economic development. They haven't recently, but we think there's a lot of companies that would be willing to do this. I've had no pushback from anybody, but we haven't gone on a road show yet because we don't have this all done. But Mark and I will be out all over the state. I had one, yeah. But so, Joe, part of it will be public, part of it will be private. Ultimately, we hope to push it into the all for private. Now, let me just say one thing about how this is going to work. Because transparency is an issue that I've always agreed with you on. But no, on this one, it's really important. This is important. First of all, the board will adopt an ethics guideline. It will be similar to the ethics guidelines they have at the universities. There will be an annual report. The meetings, there'll be 4 meetings a year that will be open. They will be closed at times in executive session to discuss specific issues, because you don't want to be negotiating out in the public. I'll tell you one of the problems we have. I talked to a company yesterday. They're down in the Cincinnati area. They said, well, we were going to leave. We had offers from other states. I said, what are the offers? Well, we had to sign a non-disclosure. So I said to the guy, well, how am I supposed to make you an offer when you signed a non-disclosure and you want me to make, that's like a pig in the poke. Come on, you got to give me some data. But that's the kind of thing we battle, Joe. But the meetings will be open. We'll do this annual report. You will get the names and the salaries of the people who work there. The ethics deal will require members of the board to recuse themselves. They will not be paid. They'll get necessary expenses, and that will be it. And you'll be able to pore over it and have access, and the legislature is going to want to keep an eye on it as long as there's any public money in there. But our goal ultimately is, and again, I don't want to give you a timeline because I've learned, taken up from one thing you said on a television show that somebody told me, I want to make sure that I don't promise something that can't really be delivered, but our goal would be to really get this thing in a mode that will self-fund. Mark?
Yeah, let me just add one point that a lot of the models kind of already exists. So if you look at the Dayton Development Coalition, you look at Columbus 2020, you look at Team Neo up in Cleveland, it's a very similar model. They do it for a very specific region. So they go out, they have some public funds. They also go out to the local corporations and get them to raise money to develop those specific regions. And so one thing I have done is I've toured the state, is met with several of those folks. And we want to work more closely with them. It's how can we take all these different regions as well as the state to operate the same way. It's kind of interesting when someone, I'll give you an example. If somebody at Columbus 2020 wanted to take a new CEO out to dinner and wanted me to come along to talk about the state, I can't go unless I pay for the dinner myself. Okay? I'm in the fortunate position I can do that. Okay? But most directors in the future won't be able to do that if they stay within the public entity. We have to allow these folks to operate like business people. Because if you don't do that, you can't have that sort of dialogue. So that's just an example. I'll give you one other quick example. Again, I'm a business guy, but I'm 9 days into this thing, folks. We saw a very interesting steel company came in and wants to invest several $100 million down in southern Ohio. And he says, hey, we already have this plant built in Germany. Okay, you should bring a team over here, to go see the plant in Germany. Well, under the current structure, it's really hard to do. Okay, so it's things like that that will allow us to move at speed of business, get on planes, get meetings, do those sorts of things in a private structure similar to what Columbus 20 is or Team Neo and some of these others.
To the governor and to Director Kvamme, now that we know that JobsOhio is going to be fast-tracked by the House and the Senate. And given that you just said Ohio's under siege, we've lost over 400,000 jobs in the last 4 years or so. We just learned today that more companies are leaving. Given that
well, we're thinking about leaving, and we're doing our best to use our charm to keep them here. And I've been described at times as charming. I think Reggie described that in the last article he wrote about me. But I do want to say, when we say fast track, you know, fast track doesn't mean John Kasich wants something and then it just happens, okay? Fast track means it's a priority for the House and the Senate. So this is not something we just hand it to them on a sheet of paper and they say, go ahead. Tom in the Senate has worked on it, Batch has worked on it, Duffey's worked on it, and they have made improvements to the bill, and they thought about things that we hadn't thought about. In fact, that's why there's still drafting going on, because they're smart people, and we don't just jam something through them. But I'm glad they understand this. And look, I don't think there's any way, when we take a look at the 400 we lost, and we take a look, you know, that gets their attention, and Mark coming in gets their attention, and this was part of the effort that I felt could lift us. That's why I think it's become a big priority, and I'm deeply grateful to Tom Niehaus, the President of the Senate, and his team, and I'm deeply grateful to what Bill Batchelder and Mike Duffey have done. But so fast.